What is going on, friends? My name is Scott from Koenig, and I'm here with another video to be able to tell you some knowledge about wheels. Again, if you have never been to our channel, it's a good time for you to look around and find all the information that we put out there in the wheel world so that you can have wheel information. So let's talk about the reason that you are probably here. You are probably here because of one of two reasons. One, you searched what is a staggered wheel fitment. Trust me, we're going to answer it in just a moment. Or two, you're probably trying to figure out if you can run a staggered wheel setup on your car. So we're going to answer all those things, but let's start in with that first thing, which is what is a staggered wheel fitment? So when we talk about the term staggered wheels, all we're talking about is that there is a different size from front to back. Now, this can be referred to in a few different ways. The first thing you can refer to it is on a rear-wheel drive car, you tend to see a wider wheel in the rear versus the front. Okay, so on some cars you may see like an 18x10 in the rear, but an 18.8.5 or an 18.9 in the front. Now, those are cars like Corvettes where you're going to see that come from the factory. There's another type of staggered wheel setup that people refer to. Sometimes they're talking about the difference between the diameters, as in it would be 19 in the rear and 18 in the front. And while that's still set up to be staggered, that's not really what we're talking to. We're gonna refer today mostly in the terms of width. So let's talk about the people that can stagger their vehicle. When it comes down to staggering a vehicle, there's gonna be really rear-wheel drive cars. There's going to be the cars that came staggered from the factory. A good example of this would be like an all-wheel drive RS3. It actually has an option where you can purchase a wider wheel in the front versus the rear. Now, there's the last category of people, and that's going to be people that actually made body modifications to be able to change their wheel size from front to rear in some sort of fashion. Wide body, something to that extent, flare. And then there's also going to be the stagger where you're actually running a wider wheel in the front on a front wheel drive car versus the rear. If you have a front wheel drive car and you're putting wider wheels on the rear, this is a cosmetic thing only. Your car is not going to handle nearly as well in 99.9% of applications. So it's not that I don't want to say that these fitments don't happen or that people don't try to make them happen. I'm just telling you that we're not really going to talk about them because I don't think that they really should happen. Don't hurt me too bad in the comments. That's just the truth. So now when you go with a wider wheel, there's going to be some natural things that come along with it, especially when you're running a more aggressive tire. And that means that you're going to have more contact patch on that tire to be able to put down to the ground. Now, on a front wheel drive race car, again, the advantage you'll get there is by having some more contact patch, you'll have some more grip. And that's something that you really could use when all the power is being put out in the front. Now, that same thought will happen on a rear-wheel drive car. If you're going to be putting out the power in the rear onto the ground, that extra contact patch will certainly help you do that and try to prevent some of that wheel spin slippage that will happen when you're putting all the power down and the torque at one time. So now let's talk about the performance aspect of staggering a front-wheel drive race car. Now, I'm going to say race car because there is a reason that we're saying race car. It's because this is typically going to be something that's going to be beneficial mostly on the track. So when you run a wider wheel in the front on a front wheel drive race car, you're doing it to really help the car rotate. See, by putting a wider wheel in the front, you're going to actually help the car to oversteer. And what that's going to allow to do is by having a narrow wheel in the rear and a wider wheel in the front, it's going to make that car feel like it turns in a lot faster, that it rotates a lot faster. And that typically is one of the areas where a front-wheel drive race car will suffer the most. So you're actually improving some of the handling characteristics. And again, these are people that know how to operate these vehicles, track cars. I just want to preface that because I know that some people are anxious to get those wide wheels in the front of their front-wheel drive cars and hit the streets, and that's not what I'm really saying, but it is something that people do, especially when they're going to be road racing and they're looking for that really great turn in to be able to put the contact down to the ground and still give them a very sharp feeling of rotation as they enter turns. If you're going off script here and you're going to just make your wheels look one way or another, and it's more of an aesthetic thing, just consider the fact that your vehicle's handling properties are going to change, and how much they change is kind of dependent on how you have your other suspension setup. So before we get out of here, I want to talk about fitment considerations, because you need to understand that if you're going to change the width or size of any one of your wheels on your vehicle now, you need to make sure that you're consulting a wheel and tire professional or you've done the homework, because you can easily end up in a situation where you may need to have body modifications, adding a flare, adding some more width, rolling the fenders, rolling quarters. These are all things that potentially could happen. And if you don't have these things, you could potentially have a rubbing issue. You never want to over tire the car, always using a tire with the correct overall rolling diameter. There's a lot of variables here. If we gave you enough information that tells you now that you can possibly stagger your vehicle, but you're not exactly sure how, please stop at this point, seek help, make sure that you're putting on the correct width wheel for your car in the correct corner. So that's it, friends. I hope we answered your questions. Staggered, square, what does it all look like? We have another video on that too. But for today, we were just trying to help you understand what is a staggered wheel setup and can you possibly run a staggered wheel setup? Fitment, setup. You feel what I'm saying? Anyhow, take care of yourself. We'll catch you on the next one.